Where were you born?
I was born in Newark, New Jersey in 1934.
Did you grow up in that same place?
Yes, I was born at Jewish Hospital in Newark. I grew up in Newark. I lived there till I went away to college, which was in Cincinnati, but I lived in Newark all my childhood.
How many siblings did you have?
I had one blood brother, my older brother, and then when my mother passed away, my father remarried my mother's sister, which made all blood relatives. A blood cousin became my stepsister. Then I had an older stepsister and two older stepbrothers that were already out of the house. So I went from one sibling to five.
So can I just ask you your full name?
My full name?
Yes.
Irving Morris Magenheim.
So what languages did you speak at home?
Well, it all depended. The house we spoke English, and I have to give you an aside. When my father came to this country, he didn't speak English. He thought Italian was the language of America for 7 years. That's where he worked. He worked in New York in Hell's Kitchen. When we went to my Zeta, my Bubba, or my Zeta's house, we spoke Yiddish.
So did you speak any other languages?
No. In school, I learned a few, like I spoke Spanish and French, but not at home. They were just languages in school.
So where did your father come from?
My father came from Poland, from Warsaw. He was in the 1900s, early 1900s. He came to Ellis Island.
Also, where was your mother from?
My mother came from what was then called Hungary. That became Austria-Hungary. That changed the borders every couple of weeks. But my mother and all her brothers all came from Hungary.
So, what is your birthday?
May 16th, 1934. I just celebrated my regular birthday last week and my Jewish birthday yesterday.
Did they come from religious homes? Your parents, did they come from?
Oh, my mother's side of the family was ultra-religious, ultra. I mean, they all owned stores, all the brothers, but they never worked on Shabbos. They had the stores open, somebody else ran them. They were very religious.
What was Jewish life like in your town?
Well, fortunately, in Newark, there was a big Jewish population. And the high school I went to, which was Weequahic High School, ironically, was the first high school in the state of New Jersey to have Hebrew as a foreign language. That's how much it was associated with Judaism. And I would say, just an aside, on the Jewish holidays, nobody went to school. And we had one nice kid, a black kid, Willie Pitts. His mother wrote a letter, please excuse Willie for being absent on account of the Jewish holidays. And the teacher said, you're not Jewish. He said, I know, but I wasn't going to be the only kid in the school. He was a good friend.
So what type of school did you attend? Private, Jewish, or public?
The high school was a public school. The grammar school was a public school. Then when I graduated, I went to the University of Cincinnati to college. I followed my older brother. And I really didn't want to go, but my father insisted. And as a reference to college, my father, who never had an education, believed in education, and he sponsored dozens of students and paid their college education. That was his thing. And I'll make one quick story. I went with my wife to New Orleans to a convention, and it was at a department store convention where I worked. And there was this lady serving drinks or something, and somebody mentioned the name Magenheim. I had a nameplate. And she said, who's a Magenheim? I said, I am. She said, where are you from? I said, Newark, New Jersey. She said, did you know Morris? I said, that was my father. She dropped the tray. She hugged and kissed me, started crying. I said, take it easy, just take it easy. She said, your father's the reason I'm here. Well, I know he wasn't promiscuous. I said, what are you talking about? She said, I had two sons. He sent them both to Rutgers University in New Jersey, paid their tuition. When they graduated, he sent them both to Tulane Medical School in New Orleans, and they're both doctors. He paid all their tuition. And then he sent me to live with my sons. But that's what he did. He just believed so hard in education. He just sponsored all these kids, I don't know how many, to go to college. That was his donation to mankind, I called it.
So, what did your parents do for a living before the war?
My father owned a grocery store, Italian-American store. My mother worked with him. She was very ill, so she couldn't work that much. And my parents, they had self-service grocery store, the first one in New Jersey.
Did your family belong to a synagogue?
Yes, we did. We belonged to a Custer Avenue synagogue, and I will tell you, it was a comedy. All the uncles, except one, lived in a cluster, like its own ghetto. This one uncle lived in a city outside, but all the rest were in the same city. And when my grandfather would start walking to shul, as he passed another house, another uncle got behind him. And as the uncle was behind him, the kids got behind him. By the time they get to us, we were like the Pied Piper. We all walked in a row right to the shul, all the uncles and all the kids. And that was every holiday. And they used to call us the Pied Piper. We had just everybody paraded to shul all the time.
So, what kind of shul was it?
It was an Orthodox shul. It was, the women sat upstairs. The Torah was in the middle of the closet. And I will tell you, to me, a comical story. On Yom Kippur, they solicited funds, but nobody ever had money with them. And there was a fellow named Mr. Leapshoots. I'm not sure. I think he owned a junkyard and a scrapyard. And he was an immigrant, and he was great. When they were giving pledges, he would say, I pledge $1,000. You know, $1,000 in those years was like a wealthy, wealthy man. He said, I pledge $1,000 anonymously. He had no idea what anonymously meant. He heard it. So everybody says, thank you, Mr. Lipschitz. Every year, $1,000 anonymously. That's how he paid it. And he always paid it. And it was a nice shul. It was very good. I'll tell you an anecdote about the shul. All my relatives, I had a cousin, Neil. He lived real close to the shul. And we used to play stoop ball at the shul, you know. And the shamus was a guy named Reuben Lubin. And he thought everybody called him O'Neill. Hey, O'Neill. He thought he was Irish. He said, O'Neill, would you like to make a quarter every Shabbos? He says, doing what? He says, you'll turn the lights on and turn them off. He made him the Shabbos guy. So Neil says, sure, I'll take the money. So he gave him a quarter, and out of every quarter, I got a nickel. My uncle, Neil's father, find out he was the Shabbos guy. He was the only one not in the grocery business. He had a bar with a gun. He came, he wanted to kill the shamus. He said, you made my son a guy. It was just, it wasn't comical, but it was comical. And he wanted him to pay the money back. He couldn't because I spent the nickels already. Anyways, that was the shul.
So what was the rabbi's name?
At the shul, let's see, the shamus was Reuben Lubin, and the rabbi was Rabbi Harry Dick. That was his name. And the rabbi that taught me my Bar Mitzvah was Rabbi Halberstetter, and he was from Israel.
So did you have any formal Jewish education?
Sure, I went to Hebrew school for a long time, to Rabbi Halberstetter.
So did you have grandparents alive when you grew up?
My grandfather died, about a year before my bar mitzvah, and my grandmother lived about 3 years after that. But my grandfather was great, and I'll tell you an anecdote about him. He never worked. The sons brought him to America, and they all supported him. He davened all the time. In the shul, we had our own window with the stained glass, Marcus family. And the sons, the 7, all came to him for advice. And they had big things going on. Buy this property, buy that store, buy not. And he would either give them thumbs up to do it or thumbs down. And I asked him one day, I said, Zeta, what makes you so smart? He said, "Ich weiß nicht." I said, well, he said, I'm not smart. I said, but you're making decisions for your sons that are expensive if they make mistakes. What? He says, look, I got to be right half the time. I said, what are you talking about? He says, they don't know I don't know nothing. You know now, and I know, and you're not going to tell them. And I give him advice. It's got to be right half the time. And that's the way he taught his kids. And he was pretty lucky.
Was he a religious man?
What? Oh, my grandfather, Zeta, very much. Extremely. Ultra Orthodox.
Did they live near you?
All of the uncles lived within walking distance, except one lived in a city about 4 miles away. Everybody in the family, we lived like in a ghetto, our own ghetto. They all lived close.
What were their names?
My grandparents, his name was Marcus Mayer, and her name was Zlata, Z-L-A-T-A, Mayer.
Can you share any memories about them?
Oh, I've had a lot of memories. I used to go, all the Seders was at their house. Most of the holidays, while they were living, was at their home. And after that, the family sort of broke up. We did have Seders at my house, but they were nothing like what they had. I mean, theirs were massive.
So, what was Shabbos like in your parents' home?
Well, we didn't celebrate that much Shabbos, but near the end of his life, my father, he worked on Shabbos. He stopped working late on Saturdays. He would open the store, come home, and he would let other people run it. And it was just a normal Shabbos. We would have, my mother was a great cook, tremendous, and my stepmother was, and she would make traditional foods on Shabbos. But as far as services or nothing, we really didn't have them.
Did any of them make Kiddush?
Well, my Zeta did all the time, and occasionally if we went to an uncle, he would have Kiddush, but not too often.
Did you build a sukkah in your parents' home?
A what?
A sukkah.
One time, we had a sukkah. Beside that, they were always at my grandfather's.
On Passover, did you guys have matzah?
All the time. But we never knew from Shmura matzah, thank God. We had regular matzah, always.
Tell us a little bit about Passover at your grandparents'.
Passover? At my Zetas, it was, well, those pictures, you'll see the mob that was there, especially at the end. But it was a great holiday. I mean, it was fantastic. It was all relatives. There was no room for outsiders. And it was just a wonderful holiday. And I will tell you something else. As the kids grew up, my sisters and my stepsisters and all my cousins, we had so many kids that we never played with anybody that was out of our family. We only played with our own cousins. And whether right or wrong, we used to go to the Orange Mountains. My Bub and Zeta would have their folding chairs in the early summer. All the uncles would have their delivery trucks circling like the Indians around there, and we just played with each other. And we all had other friends. If they wanted to play with us, we wouldn't let them because they weren't relatives. I mean, that's what it was like. And it was great. And then afterwards, this was early in the year, in the summer. After that, everybody went to the Catskills for the balance of the summer. The mothers and the kids all stayed at Kuchelains. Kuchelains are where they shared the same refrigerators in a building. And the fathers came up Saturday night and came home Sunday. And that's the way we lived all through the summers.
Is there any memories about your Jewish life while you were growing up, such as bar mitzvahs, weddings?
Well, I had a massive bar mitzvah. And the reason my father wanted, my brother had a big bar mitzvah and I had a big bar mitzvah. The reason he did it, he wanted to show his friends what a Jewish bar mitzvah was. The majority of the people were Italian, and there were some Jews there, but all the relatives. But it was a tremendous, the bar mitzvah was unbelievable. The reason he did it, he had no daughters. Well, fate would have it, after he married my aunt, he had the one daughter at home, so he had to give her a massive wedding. And I'll tell you a story about her wedding. I was in Brooklyn at the Lubavitch at a wedding at the Rebbe's house, and across the street they had the Lubavitch Hall. So that's where it was Rabbi Samuel's daughter. So we go into the hall, and I recognized a giant chandelier. I'm looking at that chandelier and looking. I said, I must have dreamt about this. So I asked, what is this? They said, it's the Lubavitch Hall. I said, what was it? It was the Brooklyn Jewish Center. So I called my stepsister. I said, where were you married? She says, the Brooklyn Jewish Center. That's where I saw the, isn't that weird? Then I just recognized the chandelier.
Is there one main memory that stands out about your childhood?
Oh, there's a lot of different memories about it. I can say we lived in a neighborhood almost all Jewish, but there were some non-Jews. There was a little anti-Semitism, but not anything major. But I will give you an anecdote. My mother was sick, and whenever my brother and I fought, she would call my father. He'd come home and spank us and go back to work. And I remember this one day, I'm calling your father. So before he got there, I bit myself all the way up and down my arm. My father came home, and I'm crying. He says, all right, look what happened. I said, look what Herbie did to me. You bit your brother. He starts spanking him. He says, no, he bit himself. He says, don't tell me my son was crazy. When he left, I told my brother, see, don't screw around. You'll think that was a picnic. But we got along pretty good.
Did any weddings stand out or bar mitzvahs?
Tell us about your bar mitzvah.
My bar mitzvah, well, the book is here. He's going to take some pictures of just what it is. But that bar mitzvah was a show place. It was my father showing off to all of his friends what a bar mitzvah was. And like I explained, we had a Chazan. His name was, I forgot it now. But Rabbi Samuels, when he saw the bar mitzvah book, he knew the Chazan. He said he was the most famous Chazan of the times. I'll think of his name in a minute, but...
Kozhevitsky? No.
What? No, it's in there. His name was, oh my God, he brought a whole choir with him. But he was a famous Chazan.
Was it
What?
one of the opera singers?
Yeah, I can't remember. No, but my father, you talked the opera singer. Who were the two Jewish opera singers?
I forgot their names.
There were two Jewish opera singers. And one of them, my father was very close to, and he used to drive up to the Catskills with him. And they were famous Jewish singers, too. But the Chazan, I can't remember. Oh, I'll think of it before this is over.
Can you tell us about your wedding?
My wedding? It was a nice affair. We had it catered. Actually, my wife, there was a young lady I dated that was renting from my mother-in-law in my wife's house, and we broke up or something, and I went to get the picture. And years later, my mother-in-law tells me a story. I was at a gas station, and my wife told her, see that guy? That's Irv Magenheim. She says, really? Yeah, I'm going to marry him. I had no idea who the heck she was. And as fate was it, she married me. And she was very sick also, very sick. And my mother was sick, and she was sick. But she had lung cancer. I took her to Mayo Clinic. They opened her up and said, there's no hope. You're going to live 3 months. Well, she said, if I'm going to live 3 months, she smoked 2 packs a day. She said, what's the difference? She went to 4 packs. She lived 16 years smoking 4 packs a day. I kept saying, you can't do that. She says, why not? I should have died 5 years ago, 7 years ago, 9 years ago. And she was quite a lady. When she went to rehab, she was in remission. She told the doctor, I just want to live to see my daughter's wedding. She not only saw the wedding, but she danced with all the doctors. And her hair came out, which she never grew. She lost the wig. She picked it up at the wedding, went to the microphone and said, I'm so excited I flipped my wig. She was quite a lady. And then she'd go to rehab and tell this lady, I can't remember her name, that if I made it, you could make it. And this lady cried, no, I'm going to die. What will my daughter do? What will my don't worry, you're going to make it. You're going to make it. No. You ever hear of tough love? She went in there. I drove her one day. She told the lady, her name was Mildred. Mildred, I've been thinking about it. You ought to die and die soon. Everybody will be happy. Nobody wants to hear your complaints. This lady got so mad, she went through treatment. She's still living. So that's what you call tough love.
So, what is the happiest occasion you remember?
The happiest occasion? Probably when my daughters were born. The first one was a stillborn, died at birth. And then I had 3 others, and that was happy. And I have to say, my great-grandson was also a happy occasion.
If there was one thing you could relive or revisit, what would it be?
It's interesting. I always told people there's 2 things I'd like to relive. I'd like to be a freshman in high school again and have this, the same kind of life, and I'd like to be a junior or senior in college. Those were the 2 best times of my life. And when I went to college, I was in what was called a co-op school. You worked 7 weeks, you went to school 7 weeks. You worked 7 weeks, went to school 7 weeks. And I had some of the greatest jobs during the 7 weeks. I worked at Al Lang Field, Yankee Cardinal spring training. I worked all the hotels along Miami Beach. I mean, I had a great time doing the co-op jobs. And that was 2 great memories, both of the schools.
Were you involved in religious or other Jewish cultural activities growing up?
Through the shul, we had a club. There was a, and actually, I will tell you one important thing. When I went to work for my first permanent job, I worked for Bergner's in Peoria, Illinois. Well, no, I worked in Cincinnati, but then I went to Peoria. And it was owned by a company called Maus Frere. Maus Frere was from Geneva, Switzerland. Maas and Nordman. Actually, Mrs. Maas was the world chairman of ORT. And they bought the store in Peoria because they thought that Hitler was going to go to Geneva, and they were afraid that they didn't want to have that as their only company, so they bought this thing in Peoria. Hitler never came, so they never came. But they did establish at the shul we had in Peoria, they did establish a fund, which I attended quite a bit since there were only 2 of us that worked for them that were Jewish. And there was we had sessions while we lived there. But then ultimately, they sold their interest. They were the largest retailers in Europe, larger than the Rothschilds. And they not only owned the businesses, but they owned all the centers they were in. And the centers aren't like here, they open a shopping center, it's 30, 40. Their centers were hundreds of years old. And they were a very wealthy family. And they did donate to the shuls in Peoria while we were there. And they had some guilds and social events.
Did you encounter tefillin or talis or any other religious items growing up?
What's that?
Did you encounter religious items like tefillin or talis growing up?
No, not really.
Did you have tefillin at your bar mitzvah?
Well, at my bar mitzvah, we had obviously a massive affair, but...
Tefillin?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Did you put on tefillin at your bar mitzvah?
Yes, I did. And when my mother died, my brother and I were very young, and we went to shul for the whole year, laid tefillin every morning, except Shabbos or the holidays. And that's what we were taught to do.
And said Kaddish.
And said Kaddish for a whole year.
What was Yom Kippur like in your family?
It was a good holiday. I mean, all the holidays, but as long as my Zeta was living, it was a great holiday because everything stemmed around their home.
Were you involved with any youth groups?
No.
Jewish youth groups?
No. I didn't know if they even existed. I will tell you a funny story. Since the shul was an old synagogue, they didn't have much sports or anything. And across the street was a Catholic church called St. Charles, a very beautiful church. And my cousin Neil and I played basketball for St. Charles because we liked it and they were nice people. And we won every game except one, and we lost to B'nai B'rith. And everybody on the team said we threw the games, which we really didn't. But the irony was, the coach was a guy he was a priest named Father Henry. He said, "Irv, I got to speak to you." I said, "What's the matter?" He said, "Irv, you've never missed a game, you've never missed a practice. But lately, I haven't seen you on Sundays. I said, you're right, Father, I'll try and do better. He never saw me on Sundays. I never went to the church. I said, I'm going to try to do better. But to me, it's still a funny story.
Are there any other childhood or teenage experiences or memories that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I could. Again, it'll revert back to my mother's illness. She had high blood pressure, and during the war, she donated blood to the Red Cross. Well, they didn't realize it then, but you can't take blood from people with high blood pressure. It makes them sicker. And they were East European, and they were old-fashioned, and once a month, an apothecarius came with leeches. They had bloodsuckers. They used to put 2 on each side of her neck, and they would suck the blood. And you know how they stop sucking the blood? They blow up like a balloon and explode. And my brother thought it was barbaric. That's why he became a doctor. And ultimately, I think that killed her. But some good always comes from some bad. My mother used to smoke Raleigh cigarettes. And they used to have coupons. Years and years ago, Raleigh had coupons. And when she died, my uncles, my father, they went through all her thousands and thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of coupons. God knows how many years she smoked and never redeemed one. In fact, one uncle made a statement, if we knew she had it, we could have saved her life and bought an iron lung. But thousands of them. My father took those coupons to the Board of Education in Newark, and he donated it to them, and they built a Fanny Magenheim Memorial Playground in one of the schools, and it's still there. So at least the coupons did some good.
Did you experience any anti-Semitism growing up?
Very minimal. Yeah, there's always some people, you know. Yeah, you're a dirty Jew. Oh, no, I shower. But very few. It was more a Jewish area than non.
Was being Jewish important to you growing up in your family?
What?
Was it something that was important to you or your family?
Oh, I think so. I think when they moved from New York, before we were born, into Newark, they wanted to live in a Jewish area. And it was.
Is it important that Jews continue to exist?
Considered it what?
Is it important that Jews continue to exist?
Oh, in that area?
Yes.
Do you feel that
Oh,
it's
a lot of.
important for the experiences that you grew up with your grandfather and Jewish holidays, do you feel it's important that continues?
Oh, yeah. It did. In fact, some of the uncles picked up from after he passed away and did a lot of the services. But, you know, as we moved away, we moved from town, and once I left and went out to Cincinnati, Newark was a nice place to be from. I wouldn't want to go back there. But, the rabbis, what is it, Morristown is right there. And that's where all of them go to study. And when we were kids, we used to ride our bikes up to Morristown. And I think I told you, Morristown was famous for the yeshiva, but it was also famous for the home of the CNI dog. That's where all the blind people trained with the CNI dogs. And it was funny in the summer to watch the rabbinical students in their black and these guys with the dogs, and the dogs take them into the movies. Why do they go to a movie if they're blind? But they sit there and listen to it, and they all have to train with the dogs, which was interesting. So to answer your question, it was important for my parents to want to live in it. Well, my Zeta, everybody wanted to live in a Jewish neighborhood.
What about your children? Did you give them at all a Jewish education?
Debbie, my youngest, was very active. She was active in the shul for many years. But Debbie was the first with major medical problems. She had epilepsy. She had brain surgery. And she's had a lot of medical problems. And she still is in contact with some of the women at the shul, and they keep inviting her, and she comes maybe once a year to an event, but she's really not active. And my other 2 daughters, beside making Humantash every year, the one in Florida never got involved, and Cindy didn't marry a Jewish fella and just never did practice. But they just never, and my wife was not religious. I mean, but you know, when you're dying, you turn to religion. And Rabbi Samuels would come over. She went into every Friday night and light candles. And she liked that. And she went into a coma on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. 5 days later, he came, and I said, Rabbi, you're too late. She's in a coma. He says, well, the hearing's the last to go. And he said, Barbara, I want you to know my son's wife just had a baby boy. Now, my wife, in a total coma, sat up, opened her eyes, said Mazel Tov. She laid down and died 2 hours later. And he said, she didn't say Mazel Tov to my son. She was saying goodbye to the world. And the irony is, if she would have lived 2 more hours, I would have had the same yahrzeit, 50 years apart from my mother and my wife. I mean, that's weird. So, but, she didn't practice, but when you're dying, you do turn to religion. She enjoyed the candles and the session with Dr. Rabbi Samuels.
What is the most important message for Jewish youth today?
The most important message, if I had to give one, I would say more do as I say, less than I do now, but I think it's important to attend the synagogue. I think it's important to support it. I go to the synagogue 7 days a week. That's become my real social outlet, and I think it's important for me. I'm selfish. It's important for me to continue it. And not only do I go to the shul, I go to the shul on 76th Street when they need a minyan. I go to the shul on Brown Deer Road when they need him. I'm a millionaire. My time is free, and if I can do some good for somebody, I feel like I'm helping. So they all need minions, so I go. But I still, I relate to the shul more than the shul more than any of the others. It's just they're a Hamish group.
What about a Jewish experience or a holiday experience? Something at your parents' home or your grandparents' home?
Well, holiday experience. I can remember one in Miami when I was on a co-op job. I think it was the Shelbourne Hotel. I went to it was either Yom Kippur or one of the major holidays, and I went to shul there. And it was more like a wedding than a Jewish holiday, but it was a very nice affair, and it was very well planned, and I just got exposure to a different group, and it was in Miami. But I can remember the rabbi. The first of every month, you come up the steps. He said, "You got your $5? No, go home and tell your mama you need it." I said, "No, I don't need it. You do." But yeah, he was a good rabbi, and I enjoyed him, and it was very nice. But all the shul was great, the people were great, and I'm going to say we had our own clique. My uncles and my cousins, we didn't need other relatives, yet we did, but it was a clique, and nobody could break that barrier. And that's about it.
Anything else you want to ask, Nathan?
No.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Mel, thank you for your time. And Yasher Koyach.